All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Another episode. Today I have Johnoson Crutchfield. He is a real estate investor. I really like his story. I'm going to just kind of pre-frame. He started in 2015, originally an educator, and of course we got to meet him at the DFW REI Club. His story a little bit, where he's going to tell it, but I want to pre-frame it here. Is that where some guys start late, a lot, or they start early and way earlier. He started later and really was able to grow quickly. And so I think it's a lot of value in that. And of course, I know Robin we've had on. Robin is very impressed with him as well. Has always spoke highly, and I got to hear him talk. So start at the top, or start at the bottom, whichever one. But, I always like origin stories. So, Johnoson, welcome to the show. And, tell us about how you got started and how all that came about.
Sure. Well, first, let me get the little giggles out of my stomach here, because I haven't been in the studio this nice, man. This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I get to see you. Do people get to see you?
Yeah. Well, this will be on YouTube.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they get to see you and get to see Misty, and
Yeah.
y'all like famous.
No,
I got to get it all out. I got to get it all out here.
it's okay. I sweat usually at the beginning. I'm like, oh shit, the mic is hot. I'm like, my arms are sweaty and stuff.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the invite, because this is a good experience for me, and very good to meet you. Rob is great. They've just been very, very inspirational. I knew him before he quit his job and went full-time real estate investing. So he's one of those good examples. But I'll dive right in and tell you my story. And I like to start it from when I was a little kid and never imagined being in rooms like this with people like you.
Yeah.
I grew up in a 600 square foot house with a family of 5. And we didn't know that we didn't have anything, right? We didn't know that it was a small house. It was home. We didn't know that our neighborhood was on the bad side of town, but it was. And I just knew that every day my dad went up and he went to work, and my mom went to work, and they came home. And that's the best example that they ever could have gave. And, I never knew that college wasn't an option. So I always was told, you're going to go to college. When you get 18, this is when parents used to say, when you get 18, you got to get out of here. I don't think we can say that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm telling my kids, hey, when you get 18, you can stay. You just got to pay rent. I think that's the evolved version, right? But I always thought like college was mandatory. And so I did that. I went to school in high school, did pretty well, and then went to college, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do. But I was that guy going to college, had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with my life, but that was the next step. And so I remember, I thought maybe I'll be a preacher, because the preacher was kind of inspirational, right? I'll be a preacher.
Yeah.
So I majored in religion. And then I was like, well, I don't know, I'm kind of bad. So maybe I need to change it to psychology, and because that seemed cool, right? Like the way people think. And I like the psychology professors. And then I ended up saying, well, what about I want to have some time off when I get to be an adult. So what about teaching? Right? Because they get summers off and all the holidays. My mom was a teacher. So I was like, and they always need teachers.
Yeah.
And so I ended up doing that and became a teacher as a middle school math, science teacher, taught social studies even. My first year teaching, funny story, I didn't have a classroom. So the school, so rough, so many kids. This was actually right after Hurricane Katrina in Baton Rouge, when all of those kids from Hurricane Katrina had to come from New Orleans, and they were in schools in Baton Rouge that next year. So we had so many kids in the school that I didn't have a classroom. I actually had a rolling cart that I used to push around from class to class, and all of my stuff was in there. And I would take the teachers' classrooms when they were on their off periods.
Wow.
So that was my first year teaching. I had a really good time. Really, some of the teachers there, especially the older, more mature ones, taught me how to be an adult, right? They taught me how to talk to the children, how to, appreciate the conversations of y'all ever heard of the teacher's break room? And how to keep that stuff to yourself. But they ended up suggesting, hey, you would be better than the principal. Go get your principal license. So I went and got my principal license, and that required more school. And then, I became a school principal, and somebody was like, you'd be a good professor. So I went and got a professor's license and just kind of took that natural journey of progressing. But one of the things that I always remember is, even though I was having fun, and, one year I got Principal of the Year award, and it was cool, I would always look at my paycheck and be like, this is not enough, right? And I remember some of the conversations I would have with my wife. I would be like, honey, the AC is on too long, right? Or you leaving the front door open too much. These were the things that I heard as a kid, my dad saying, and I always would say, I'm never going to do that when I get to be an adult, but I
Yeah.
was doing it.
Misty still does it. Don't worry. We don't need to.
Cut the lights off,
Like,
you're just
stop
leaving
it,
the
Misty.
lights on when you leave the house.
I feel you because I want to stop, Misty. Like, I want to leave the light on because I want it on.
Yeah, so
I'll be back in 5 hours.
Enter real estate. I remember having a pretty tough conversation with my wife. She's like, "Hey, you're never here. You're taking the kids out to the sideline at the high school football game. Like your life is work, but then you're still complaining about money. You're still saying we don't make enough." And I was making good mid six figures at that point, but like most people without financial education, you make more, you spend more. You borrow and you got to pay it back. And it just wasn't going to work. So I remember that final conversation where we decided, hey, you're going to be home more. And at the time, I didn't see real estate being the vehicle that was going to allow that, but I made that decision to be home more. And once I took the job as a professor at Ole Miss, I actually had a lot of free time compared to being a principal at a school, right? A lot of time to think about what I was going to do next. And real estate became that vehicle that I jumped into. One of the guys at my church was an active real estate investor. He'd been going to that church for 2 or 3 years, and I did not know that he was a real estate investor. But one day after church, I saw him on his laptop with a spreadsheet, an Excel file, all these numbers, and I went over and sat next to him, and I had been listening to Dave Ramsey's, podcast on the drive to work, and so I identified that he was doing something financial, right? And we kicked it off, and I remember kind of like it was yesterday, he said, hey, if you can run a school, you can run your own business, and the rest is history. So that's really kind of my pathway into my first real estate deal and like starting to be exposed to the world. Before that, more naivety. Okay, somebody who went to school, took their first job right out of school, was a teacher, principal. Before that conversation, I thought everybody went to work during the day. This is like a 26-year-old, 25-year-old guy.
Yeah.
I thought during the day, like everybody was doing what I was doing, like going and working at 8 to 5 and then coming home. Okay, maybe they had night shifts. But I remember like starting to have some free time and being like, why is Walmart so full during the day? Why are these people in Target? It's just a really naive story, but that's, that's how programmed you can be. Like, if you like the Matrix, like I was in the Matrix and following the Matrix.
And then you got unplugged. So, what trips me out is kind of what you mentioned, how it's so deceiving. You're like, you've known this guy for a couple years, and he's the dude in Walmart, and during the middle of the day, you know what I mean, that you're talking about, that you have no idea, but you had no idea that he otherwise was doing something on the side. It was almost like undercover.
Absolutely.
That trips me out.
Look, he was an elder at my church. He worked full time. He had a job, and he would get up there and do, church stuff. And I never knew that he had a business on the side at all. Like, I never would have known. But those conversations that I don't even think I would have been open to having without having started the podcast listening and kind of personal self-development, those conversations can be life-changing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Did you kind of pick his brain as well, or kind of what got you? Because you mentioned podcast listening too. I know that's stuff that has helped me, and that's helped tons of people. Just kind of hearing other people's stories and things. Where'd you kind of start? Did you pick his brain to start there, or did you kind of go off on your own? And
no, so I think it was a combination of things. Like if I go back, this will tell you when I started. If you've been in the podcast space, so you have Dave Ramsey's baby steps program.
Yep.
So that probably would be the first start of like, okay, you actually have to pay bills before the creditors start calling your phone.
Yeah.
I'm just being real. This is what it was like. And I had good jobs, but this is what it was like. And then, Clayton Morris, talking about rental houses and turnkey stuff in Memphis. And, there was other podcasts, I think Bigger Pockets, like the website, just starting to get on there. And it's funny because you can't change any of your posts from like 10 years ago on Bigger Pockets. So people can go out there and see like the types of questions I was asking.
Yeah.
And it's embarrassing, but it's
Do you go back and look too?
hey, please, anybody, just help me. Why can't I get any help getting into the space? But I think it was a combination of those things, and then meeting him and seeing a real person that I could actually like talk to, and seeing that spreadsheet. He was in his mid-50s, but he was going to retire, and his whole plan was retiring with these rental properties.
Yeah.
Right. And so I remember inviting him over to dinner with my wife, and we said, hey, and I think I can use his name because nobody can look him up. But we said, hey, Leandre, can you come over and just talk to us about this?
Yeah.
And he actually ended up bringing another guy from the church who was his private money lender, right? They come over to our house, and basically they're just walking us through, like, this is what you look for. This is the type of property to look for. These are the type of properties I buy. And we had a good conversation. And again, at that table in our house, it was, if you can run a school, you can do this. And at no point before that had I ever thought I could run a business, right? At no point before that had I ever thought, okay, I could own my own thing. It was all, you go to school so you can get a good job, right? Nobody ever told me you can go to school and run your own business. And it's kind of sad because, the principal of a year, right, at a school, impacting thousands of kids, never told any of them that you can grow up and start your own business.
Yeah.
Like, for 10 years in education, I never told them that. It was always, hey, get good grades, listen to your teachers, behave, because this is what it's going to be like when you have a job. But anyways, after that conversation, it was game on. So I started by just trying to have conversations with sellers. That was my thing. It's still my thing. I like being direct to seller. I like talking to sellers. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to get an opportunity, I need to be talking to the people who own property. So I started by just going on sites like realtor.com or Zillow. I don't know which one it was at the time. But at the time, you could actually find the for sale by owner's number at the bottom of each listing.
Right.
And I would just call them. In fact, at the beginning, I was scared to call them. At the beginning, I would just text them. And it was the worst text in the world because I didn't have any money. And I had kind of heard that you might be able to finance properties from the seller if you didn't have any money. So I would text something like this: hey, I don't have any money, but I want to buy your property. Can will you sell or finance it to me? Like, I probably sent thousands of these.
Yeah.
And some people would reply like, what a joke, no way, never, no. And I would actually do follow-up, right? This is no campaigns or sophisticated systems. This is my iPhone. I would do follow-up and be like, hey, why didn't you reply to me? Don't you want to sell or finance your property to me? Just trying to get responses.
Yeah.
And somewhere like 2 or 3 months into doing this, I had a guy who said, yes. That was his answer. And I was like, okay, great. Like, for how much? What are your terms? And he was like, you offered it to me, so tell me what you want to do. Turns out this is like one of my good friends now, good investor, partner, one of my private lenders, right? But he actually met me at the property. This is our first deal. He met me at the property. It was in bad shape. And we actually did that deal as a seller finance deal. We structured that deal where I make monthly payments to him. I'm still paying him on that house.
Yeah.
It's been at least 10 years. He still gets a monthly direct deposit every single month on that house. And it just worked. And that deal kind of taught me so much about the process. It taught me more about relationships. It taught me that follow-up works, right? It taught me so many things on that one project. But doing that first deal, you talk about mistakes, right?
Yeah.
You talk about things you didn't know, right? I knew that the house wasn't in condition to actually live in when I bought it. So me and my wife's idea was, like, we actually have to get this in condition to make it livable for somebody. So we said, okay, we don't have the money to fix the house. Hadn't even thought that far, right? We have it now. We're financing it.
You got it.
And we were like, well, we have this credit card that we got with the $20,000 limit on it. Like, we can just buy all the materials and paint it ourselves, right? And fix it up. And anything I didn't know how to do, I would go to Lowe's and wait on somebody to walk in and kind of stalk them and say, "Can you come help me? Show me." Yes.
Yeah.
Your face. Can you get that face? His face is like, "Did you do that?" That's exactly what I did. And no bias intended, but we went and found some help, and we got that house renovated. But mistake, we maxed out a credit card, right? A personal card in that process, not knowing what that does, but we had the house rented,
Yeah.
right? And that's how we did that first deal.
That's awesome. I got to ask this, kind of circle back to the education part, is what do you, I mean, just from your experience now and everything you've done, and then looking back, like, what is your opinion on education and just, and being part of that, you've been on both sides of the fence. Like, what are your thoughts now when you look back? Are you kind of like, do you think, man, I wish I would have, told these kids that, or maybe just in general, like, what is your thought on it now looking back?
Yeah. So, number one, I think we have a ton of excellent educators out here that are doing the very best that they know how.
Right.
And the reason is because I was doing exactly what I knew how to do, and a lot of our kids today, especially in public schools, especially in the type of schools that I was a part of, these were oftentimes very low income, inner city type environments where they do need examples, positive examples to see in schools. But oftentimes I think these are the same kids that need creative, out of the box strategies to facilitate like life improvement. I certainly wish that I would have told more kids like, hey, you don't just need to sit in the row and follow directions and be quiet. Like, I told way too many kids that. I think we have some serious issues that we need to address in our schools and the education system. Like, being an educator, if you can have people just being honest, like, what are we telling them? We're telling them to copy us. That's what we're telling them. We're telling them, hey, this is the example of what it looks like to make it, right?
Yeah.
And if that's what we're telling them, then they need to see way more examples. And there's some great things going on. So I don't want to disparage that, but they need to see way more examples of creativity, entrepreneurship. They need to see more examples of what's possible outside of just the cookie cutter. What do you want to be? And you get the policeman, fireman, teacher, doctor answer, right? For sure.
What would you, anything, just having been in being an educator, what's some of the stuff that you would change, kind of looking back and knowing what you know now, and I mean, anything that you would say that you would do different or change yourself if you were back in that?
That's a good question. I think we had an opportunity when COVID happened to really look at like disrupting the current way that we do school. So one of the favorite memories I had of COVID is like actually getting to have my kids shadow me, right?
Yeah.
And I think having more program structure where kids are, I forget what that word is, but where they could actually be on the job or in the business would change a lot of the ways that we structure things. Because we have so many kids right now that will gladly run to you and say, hey, I'm going to Alabama, or I'm going to Ole Miss, and you ask them, what are you studying? Well, that's what you hear, right?
They don't know.
They don't know. Like, they don't. Why are you studying that? Why are you interested in that? Because somebody told me they make a lot of money, right? Or because somebody told me I was good at it. But I think we really could expose kids earlier on to jobs and fields in real time by actually having them. And I forget what the word is for whatever. Is it internship? Yeah, stuff like that. I think is a big thing that we could start earlier in high school.
Yeah.
And we had that opportunity during COVID for my kids to have them like be around us in our work environment. And I think like a child hearing a sales call is life-changing.
Yeah.
Right? Them hearing somebody go through the sales process, where does that happen in any public school in America?
Yeah.
Right? But that's where, opportunity lies for a lot of folks, and we're not doing that in high school.
Yeah. Be able to give them the chance to do it. It's intern. I mean, it's work.
Internship. That's the word.
What does it work? You don't work for money. You work to learn. Go to work to learn, not work for money.
Yes.
And then by the time they walk out, they're like, oh, we've learned the skill. So anything that you feel like the school system does that's great on the other side, because there's always a lot of people talk about, oh, school's bad, this and that. But do you feel like there's anything that they have done that's that they should continue doing as far as just seeing both sides of the fence?
Like I said, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of educators that are doing great work, and that's why I'm not the public education education basher.
Yeah.
There's some great folks, coworkers that I have. They put their time, soul, energy into creating good outcomes for kids, and also some of them like could be making a lot more money, and they're sacrificing it, and they know they are in order to teach our kids. So I think the people themselves is the valuable thing.
Yeah.
I also think that in the world of today, when my company's bigger now and I get to hire all the time, there is a lot of benefit to some of the systems that school does create, right, in our brains. So many people are like, I want to own my own company so I can just work 1 day a week. And it's like, okay, let's see what results you get if you come in when you want to, right? And so some of those systems of, okay, I got to be on a schedule, or I need to be consistent with a routine, or I need to complete things by deadlines. Some of those things actually do benefit us in our business. But we've got to be careful about making it where that's the only way. And I think the more our schools create multiple pathways for kids, the better we're doing for them, for sure.
So I got to ask, just on your own kids, I mean, have you said, hey, public school, or do you homeschool, or what do you?
Public school. They're public school all the way. But hey, like I pull them and I pull them. And if they ask me I could care less about unexcused absences. A couple of weeks ago, we went to, I got to go to Cancun, and I took my kids. Last year we went to Ghana. We took our kids like 2 weeks. And school can ask if they want, but we're providing them with opportunities where we're teaching them. And I think that's the right way to do it. And ultimately, that's whose job it is anyway, right? It's the parents' job to figure out how to create the opportunities for their kids.
See, Misty, it's okay if the kids are late. We pull our kids all the time. We're like,
it's not perfect attendance. It's not because think about all the things that they are going to miss if the schools don't have people like us in those rooms.
Yeah, I agree with that. We had a teacher tell us. So we're big in jiu-jitsu, and I ask these questions because I never really get to sit down with someone who's been on both sides of the fence. Usually, it's most investors are like, screw school and that's it. Like it's just they never. But you got to experience both sides, because like we had a homework for us is one that just is like, oh gosh, more homework. But like for me, them getting home is time to go to jiu-jitsu. It's time to train. Time to, there's other things too. And I remember one of the teachers was like, your homework's more important than jiu-jitsu. Told our youngest that, and I was like, you better tell us the other way around in my house. In my house. And I know they're doing their job, but that's why it's nice to hear someone say, I pull my kids, because we do the same thing, but it's not out of like we dislike. It's just the other experiences, like all the stuff they get to do when we pull them.
Yeah, and full transparency. Mom's a professor too,
so
they're getting it from the other parent. They're getting the rigid rules, college's expectation. And so they get that, and we kind of balance it with the dad says, but if you want to do something creative, come to me.
Do you have the one kid? How many kids do you have?
I have two. I have an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old.
Do you have the one that's more creative than the
Absolutely.
Ours is 11.
Absolutely.
11 and 8.
Yeah. 9. No.
9. G-Man's 9?
Yep.
Oh, damn. I'm behind, man. He is 9.
She's going to get you for that.
I know. I'm still thinking he's 8, man, because some of these kids...
He just had a birthday, right?
He did.
Yes,
he did. It was October. Yeah, it was last month.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Grayson. 11 and 9. So, but you still preference some of it. It was like, hey, did you have that one kid that's like out of the box, creative? There's just
all day long.
You're just not.
And you can tell, like, that she's an entrepreneur. And we actually just had this discussion Friday because they bring report cards home. So they bring the report cards home, and I've got my son who's, straight A's, 97, follows every rule, turns stuff in early. He has to be at school at 8:30, but he leaves the house to walk at 7:30. Like, this is that kid. And then you had my daughter who brings home something that's not all A's, okay? And she got the same rewards because we already know, like, just getting her to get up in the morning and go is a good is a good thing. And we'll get calls from her teacher like, hey, she drew this the whole class, or she wrote this the whole class. And we're like, cool, that's pretty cool. But, to her, we're saying, okay, you have to be respectful, and you have to, like, actually do your work, right? But we understand that she's not that kid that's going to sit in the row and follow the directions. She's just not. And it's clear already. It's clear already. She's the one that's going to say, hey, Dad, I'll run your company. Like, we already know.
Yeah. You're just preparing. Is she the younger or the older?
She's the younger.
The younger?
Yeah.
Let's see. I was the youngest. I was the outside the box, principal's office. I would have met you a lot.
She will be meeting her principal, but she's very kind, and she's a wonderful girl. But she definitely will be meeting her principal.
Yeah. You were like, hey.
Or already has. Already has, now that I think about it.
Yeah, the boys haven't got that part yet.
No.
I know one will. We haven't got there yet. That's, man, so, so kind of go into the investing side of things, so, I know single family, you've got multifamily. I know you mentioned hotels before. So, what do you prefer? I mean, kind of everybody has their preference. Do you have a certain, like, I enjoy this over this, or?
I know, my portfolio today looks like, some mostly single family homes.
Mhm.
I've got a bunch of small multifamily, so call that your 2 to 8 unit, kind of duplex, triplex, quadplex, 8plex type of properties. I think my favorite properties are the multifamily properties, right?
Yeah.
So the properties where you have multiple tenants. If you're missing some tenants, they're covering the bills for the tenants that, are not there. Um, and, I like to talk about my 66 unit because that's the largest deal I've done so far. And
Mhm.
it's my favorite property by far, from economies of scale to how we handle the maintenance to having a full-time staff person there to just all kind of benefits to that property. But in reality, the types of deals I like to do are conservative. They are pretty much like sure wins. And so I like to do things where I'm not possibly going to lose money.
Yeah.
Probably that conservative in me from growing up. And so, my dad is very active, involved in my life, and he sees what I'm doing. And I still think I have some of that, don't take too much risk type of thing in me. And so I've shied away from doing multifamily deals in the last few years because of the run up we saw, right?
Mhm.
Just seeing the prices rise up, the price per units go up, and really getting into that territory where I felt like it was a lot of speculation.
Yeah.
So the deals that I do today are still probably more of those small multifamily or, single family deals, because there have been more of those that meet that criteria of just being a little bit more conservative, sure things.
After you mentioned your dad, have you been able to kind of get them involved a little bit and say, hey,
Yeah.
after just watching you this
Yeah.
time, or?
Just a tad.
Yeah.
And this is my 7th really like full-time year in real estate. And he got in last year.
Yeah.
So he did a deal last year in year 6. And I was proud. But he comes to like anything I speak at, or he'll come to my Zoom calls on Mondays. He listens to
Mhm.
Zoom calls. He's all over my Facebook commenting. I'm like, thanks, you're helping the algorithm.
Yeah.
Helping the algorithm.
It makes you wonder the things we're going to listen to or learn from our own kids.
Oh, yeah.
If you think about that, because if
Yeah.
you grow up and you said your dad's conservative, and then he watches you, because we went through the same thing. It took me forever to be like, come on, Dad, just let's buy this together,
Yep.
and they finally make that plunge, and then after that, you hooked him up now. It's over.
Yeah.
Before you know it.
Well, he sent me a text about Monday. Was yesterday Monday? He texted me, that Bitcoin thing you were talking about is up right now. I was like, yeah, I told you it's up.
That's awesome. So it took some time, but eventually he jumped in with you. So
Yeah.
So multifamily is a thing, as far as, so you 66 units. So kind of talk about that a little bit. Kind of go through some of the challenges that you guys came across, some stuff that was, because that's, to go from single family and then make that jump. Obviously, it's a different animal to some degree. What are some of the challenges you guys came across as far as that property?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge is like the mindset that goes into like, can I actually take this down?
Mhm.
Right. So I like to tell a story like, before the 66 unit, there was a 55 unit that I passed on. Right.
Mm.
And I like to tell this story because it's probably, one of the largest dollar figure mistakes that I've ever made. I had a maintenance guy call me about an old guy that wanted to sell his property. It's a 55 unit apartment complex. At the time, the largest deal that I had done might have been a duplex, right? And I was looking to go bigger, right? I was looking to do more. But in my mind, doing more was like a 4 unit or an 8 unit.
Yeah.
And so he explains to me, hey, the seller wants to sell this. You should come talk to him. I go talk to the seller. The seller and I talked for hours about, my former life as a teacher and where I'm hoping to go in business. We kind of created a good synergy. And I said, man, how much would you want for a property like this? This is 55 units in Tupelo, Mississippi, 2018-ish. And he's like, I got to have $1.5 million. I got to have $1.5 million. Now somebody's like doing the price per unit and you're like, okay, that's a great deal by today's standards for sure. And I was like, okay, my mind immediately goes to, okay, how much is the bank going to want down? Like they've been asking me for down payments. And I'm like, okay, that means I have to come up with 300 grand and I don't have that. And at that time, I used to just be like, hey man, there's no way I'm coming up with $1.5 million. Cause $1.5 million to me in 2018 it might as well have been $1 billion, right? It was a lot of money in my mind. And so I think that mindset is one of the biggest challenges in the beginning is like when you're going bigger, you still have all these limiting beliefs about how things work. And so what I did, is I flat out told him, hey, look, I don't have $300,000 and I don't think a bank is going to loan me $1 million. Like it's me. Like when I walk in there, it's me. All these limiting beliefs. And he's like, no problem. He's like, why don't I finance it to you? Right. He's like, can you come up with 100,000? And I said, well, the 100,000 at that time seemed more like, let me make a few phone calls, right? Let me see if I can find some people that might be able to help with this. And I remember taking a few days to think about it, but calling the wrong person, right? And the person that I knew that I was getting money from at that time was my bank, right? And I called my bank and I was like, hey, this guy's going to finance me this building, $1.5 million. It's a great deal. It's downtown. This building today, y'all, is probably worth $4.5 million, $5 million. Okay. And he was selling it for $1.5 million. And it's like just 5 years later. But banker is like, hey, John, I think that's too big for you. I think you're jumping out there too fast. And I think that's a big project. I think that's a lot of money. And at that time, my mindset was so rigid, like so just fixed. I just got right on the phone with the seller and said, hey, man, I don't think I'm going to do that. Passed on it. Mm-hmm. I hate that building every time I drive by.
Did you fire your bank?
Look, I've never used him again. He's not my Facebook friend. But it wasn't his fault. I know I'm laughing. But it wasn't his fault. So I think the challenge with the 66 unit was still the same. Like the number on the deal, I'm thinking about my checking account. What's in my checking account? Can I do it? I never thought on that first deal, okay, who do I know that may help me get into this deal? Or who is doing these types of deals that I can consult for mentorship? The first time I never thought about that. The second time, that was on my mind because I knew I had missed out on an opportunity. Yeah. In fact, I had met people after I had passed on that deal who had told me, what did you pass on? Like, why didn't you call me? You talked to the wrong person. So this time when I talked to this seller, I knew, hey, contract, and then let's try to figure it out. Let's go to our network and try to figure out how we're going to get this done. And that's what I did.
Yeah. So I know one of the questions I've got is about scale and when that kind of maybe clicked or hit for you where, because I know, we've talked about portfolio size. You mentioned that kind of at the club and at what point did things kind of click more where you were like, it was, I don't want to say easier to scale, but there's like that tipping point where you're like, okay, I'm getting here and boom, kind of shoot off and take off. Like at what point did that kind of happen for you? And what was it that clicked? Was it a middle thing that clicked? Was it just time? Was it,
what clicked when I found a strategy, right? So I remember after we rehabbed that first one and we went to the banker and he was like, this is what it'll appraise for now. And this is what I can loan you on the property. This is what your payment is going to be. And when we looked at the numbers and we were like, okay, so now we're going to have $300 a month and we're going to have this refi check, which was at that time larger than any check that we had in our account. And we had good jobs, right?
Yeah. I
was like, wait a minute. So we can do this over and over. How many times I remember asking him that, how many times can we do this? And he was like, every property you bring me like this, let's just see how many you can bring me. Yeah. And that banker is still one of my favorite bankers. That one is one of my favorite ones because we still do deals together that way. The whole BRRRR strategy, buying properties, rehabbing them, renting them out, and then kind of repeating that process. we still, refi and repeating that process. We still do that.
He's still your Facebook friend.
He is still one of them. Yeah, yeah. If that means anything, if that qualifies you.
So just having that strategy is when you kind of was like, okay, I can do more of this, and if I just
Yeah.
do more, then eventually it. Because I asked that because I know, like you said, you've full time, and it's some people sit around, they sit on the game so long, or I know we've had certain points in certain businesses where it just starts to take off, and
Yeah.
what is it that made someone go, okay, that was it. That was the takeoff
Yeah,
point.
it was the seeing the process clearly. Like, I can do this. This is something that I can do. I think too, it really helps when you have time,
Mhm.
right? And I would have never. I was kind of trying to dibble and dabble as a principal, right? But I remember one day, like, leaving the school to go look at an apartment. Y'all can't fire me anymore. But going to look at apartment building, like, because, I was listening to the podcast, trying to figure it out. You have those years where you're trying to figure it out. And I remember going to see this apartment and then coming back to the school, and some kid had pulled a fire alarm and all the school was outside. Wait, because the school has to leave.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, where was the principal? He was looking at a rental property. So that wasn't going to work. But once I had enough time, right, in a situation where I could actively look and participate and engage, I think that also helps you scale.
I guess, yeah, the free time.
Yeah. I think for somebody like me too, like, when I started to see the deposits, right? Because
Mhm.
there's also this effect of the only other time I had money in my checking account, and this is like, people like, where did you grow up? Remember, 600 square foot house. And it really meant that. So, like, the only other time I had seen like more than $5,000 like in my account was student loans, right?
Yeah.
Like when they used to do that in college, right? And you know how fast that blows away.
That was taquitos and beer for one of my buddies.
That was
forget those
free
runs.
wheels, if you remember the rims for the cars and stuff. I'm guilty as charged.
They made 20s. You're right. They made 20s and 10s. So Friday.
But yeah, like when you started to see, okay, at the first of the month, instead of me just sending all of my money away, right? My mortgage, my insurance, my all this, now people are sending it to me. I got addicted to that.
Yeah.
And I still am, my team would probably say.
Yeah.
Like, addicted to seeing the number go up of people who owe you where you're the bill and you're not just sending it out for bills.
Yeah.
I think I'm still always thinking about how I can be the invoice to people.
Yeah, I get that. So her and I had this discussion on the way up because we have a property, and I'm just curious to see your thought. Everyone's different.
Yeah.
Robin has this. Everybody has their different opinions. And I always like hearing what other people's opinions are. Paying off. Robin has this thing, likes to snowball the properties, right? And
Yeah.
her and I go back and forth. I'm like, it's just so close on this one. Let's just make the move. No, we'll just keep the money and put it somewhere else. What's your opinion on stuff like that? Paying off a rental. Do you ever try to snowball, or are you like, we're going to put that somewhere else?
So how long have you been together?
We've been together, 2008?
Okay. So long enough to understand that my next question is going to be, what did you say?
I didn't really say anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she didn't say nothing. There's no, she hasn't said anything. We've both gone
He
back
likes
and
to
forth.
talk at me a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, I have this thing where I'm gonna probably go buy maybe they have Amazon, like a brick wall you can carry around and then
Okay.
just talk to the wall. It's about what the conversations turn into. So she just looks at me.
Yeah. So it's an interesting time to think through that, because, like, for me, we've talked about that with that group. The market is different
Mhm.
right now, especially for somebody like me that, we have whole teams built around scaling, right? We try to do as many deals as possible, build a portfolio, because we have overhead people eating off of us doing transactions.
Right.
But right now, the interest rates are pretty high in comparison to where they were when I was buying a lot of these properties. And so my answer is probably different today, just
Yeah.
because you're borrowing the money, maybe at 9 or 10% interest.
Mhm.
And that does change for me, like, the answer to that question.
Yeah.
My question to you would be, like, what's the goal with it? Do you have a business venture? Do you have another property? Are you looking to grow your portfolio? Because if you're looking to grow your portfolio and
Yeah.
you can find good deals, it still makes sense to take that equity and go use it to grow businesses and grow your assets. But if you're not trying to do that anymore, you know, do you really want to borrow it at this time? I think is a question that comes to mind right
Yeah.
now.
I think for me, I look at it because I'm like, well, that'd be about 11.5% interest we'd make on the money because it's very small. I mean, it's super small amount, but we've had the property for years. It was her first house, and so it's just it's a super super small loan. I'm like, just I go back and forth, and then there's a part of me is like, don't do it, don't do it.
Well,
But as far as what we would do with it, I mean, it's not like for me to answer that. It'd be like, well, it would just be extra cash flow, and if anything, that's really it. It would just increase cash flow of the properties because we don't have like for us, we don't have a large team eating off of
mhm,
that. Like you said, like you've like, hey, you're scaling. Like
right.
if it's not coming through, these guys aren't. But it's really us. It would just be, maybe some more plane tickets or some shit. Like it would, you know what I mean? It wouldn't be anything crazy, So that's why I like to kind of hear what other people's opinions are because that's something that I've always gone back and forth in that property. We're gonna do
Yeah.
it. We're not because we've done the paid off property. Then we're like, take the money out. Let's go do something else with it.
And because we're in America, you're probably always going to be able to do that.
Right.
So you could pay it off and change your mind.
Yeah, yeah. So hotel. I want to. You've mentioned that before.
Mercy.
Mercy. Talk about that one. I'm curious to hear what it is having a hotel. You've
Yeah, we won't stay on this one long. I went through this phase in 2021, 2022 when if the numbers made sense and I could figure out how to close it, I'd buy it.
yeah.
And so I've got several hotels. I've got kind of the hospitality thing going with a few Airbnbs. It's not my thing. I've learned that it's
Mhm.
not my thing. Um, you got to be very patient to do hospitality, and it's a business more than like the passive income of a rental property. Um, but yeah, I bought a couple of hotels in Iowa. I also don't like the cold, by the way. So combine the cold with the hotels, and it's been quite an adventure. But we're renovating it. The whole idea is that we're fixing the hotel. We're turning the hotel into apartments.
Mhm.
Hotel we're working on right now is in Fort Dodge, Iowa. And we've basically taken each room, put a stove and a kitchenette in the room, and then we're renting them to long-term workers, kind of mid-term workers that are coming into the area to do. They got a lot of gypsum farming up there, if y'all know gypsum for sheetrock and stuff like that. They've got a lot of guys that come up there and do that kind of work. So they rent them until about this time of year, from March to November every year.
So to get away from the hotel part,
Yeah,
you've
quickly run.
you've done. It's fun. I see. Social media is full of it, right? Oh man, this is the best. And that's why I never really paid much attention sometimes because there's certain people who are like, it's all in the hotels, all in the hotels, and I'm like, man, to me, I see it and I think
hmm
that sounds like a business. That sounds like right next to Airbnb, where I'm gonna be a little busier than I want to be versus just the long term rental of not being as busy.
It's a different business, and I think that some people are doing it well, and that's the beautiful part about real estate investing
Hmm.
is that there's so many asset classes and types of ways to do business and arbitrage, all these things. I think it's great because it allows for multiple personalities to get involved. But I also think there's a lot of strength in realizing like this is where my bread and butter is, and this is where somebody else's is, and I'm going to let them have that. I will passively invest with people that are trusted operators and they know what they're doing. But it's not for me for sure.
Yeah. So you guys change it up. It's
You
just-
won't see a Crutchfield hotel.
Yeah. Come on, man. You're like Myrtle Beach. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
It's got a ring to it.
Yeah. There you go. That's right. So so you guys decided to turn to I like that strategy as far as turn it to like a midterm or
Yeah.
a longer term rental. Did you have any issues as far as the city or any requirements or anything you had to go through to
Yeah.
make that stuff happen or
All of that process, rehab budget kind of changed. So, of
Mhm.
course, having to raise money for a rehab budget, but certainly having to go through like planning, zoning committees with the city, making sure that they were on board, trying to figure out ways to fund the whole project. That becomes an issue. Trying to make sure that we actually are going to have the demand for the product as well is like all this study. And the jury's still out on that. Okay, this property is not my favorite. This project is not my favorite.
yeah.
And so I think, it's kind of one of those things where, the challenge of, okay, how do you do business in a cold market where right now, like there's no more painting, right?
Mhm.
How do you do business in a cold market where, you know, the heater is like mandatory, like it's not optional to have
Yeah.
heat. Um, and so all of those kind of things are things that I've learned in that process. How do you do deals in a market where there's not a ton of people, right? And Iowa's not a well populated state, right? So that's something else. You know, how you borrow money in these places. How do the bankers think in a small state versus, you know, somewhere like Texas where, you know, banks are everywhere. You know,
Mhm.
it's something to think about.
Because you mentioned a few different, a few different states, Mississippi and stuff. When you started, did you start right in your
Mississippi. Yeah.
but like in your hometown,
Yes.
like where you're at, and
Yes.
then you eventually got to a point where you're like, okay, as
Yes.
as you moved and you were
Yes.
able to learn to manage, or you already had stuff in place to do that, to manage
I would
from
say,
afar.
you know, even now, 90% of the business I do is within 20 miles of our office in Tupelo, Mississippi. Like,
Yeah.
I like that. You know, you can have somebody get their eyes on it right away. We know the market, we know the lending. You know, we just it's a good feel. I would say the mistakes that I've made on projects have been with properties that are outside of our market. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean I haven't made mistakes on stuff inside the market.
How'd you end up
Um,
here in DFW? I gotta
in
ask 'cause
Dallas, you know,
it
it's
just
a good place to flip houses in 2018, 2019.
yeah,
You know, market's just going up. You've got houses that were 70,000 and 125 and then there were 200 and then 300. It was a good place to flip properties. My wife's a professor, so UTA is also a
okay,
college where she is and she loves that. So we just started spending time back and forth and liking the big city versus the little city
gotcha.
type thing.
Okay, I'd wondered that because I know that I was like, man, go from Mississippi to DFW, like like what was that thing that
Yeah.
changed? So did you guys kind of originally? I had a friend of mine that did this, and I don't know if you did this. This is somebody who kind of introduced me to real estate early on. Was they had a house in was it Utah, Salt
Hmm.
Lake City, like outside of Salt Lake, and they moved wherever they bought their multifamily.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how they started doing things. They would buy a multifamily, live there, and then they would, either sell it or move. And then and they finally rooted themselves in South Lake. But did you kind of follow the market where you're like, we'll spend some time over here, and then wife gets a job, and then you're like, all right, we like it.
No, I would say it was more the job first. It's like she's actually several times we've moved, whether it was from Baton Rouge to Mississippi or Mississippi to Dallas. It was always because she had an opportunity to do like they call them visiting professors. So
Mm,
hey, we want you to come in for a semester, and it's a common thing in higher ed. So as that happens, like okay, well we kind of like that visit, like we like that place. There's a ton of opportunity, as
yeah.
in DFW, and so we saw that and like okay, well let's do a deal there. And I remember the first deal I did from Mississippi, living in Mississippi, but in Dallas. I actually met the wholesaler on Facebook, kind of felt good about the wholesaler, did the whole project with the wholesaler managing it.
Mm,
And I was like, wait a minute, like I could actually do deals in Dallas, but it was because I had somebody I could trust. And
right.
that's probably still what I look for if I'm doing a deal outside of my market is how much do I trust the operator? Like it can't be me because I'm
Yeah.
not going to be there. And I'm certainly learning a lot about marketing, but I'm not an excellent marketer. So I need somebody who knows that area and knows how to sell in that area.
Yeah.
So
That's because that's one of those things where I think you see some people, they always start in their backyard, or maybe they a little nervous to go further out. I don't want to go too far. That's why I asked, like, did you start there? Because but you already obviously had a trusted team in
yeah,
place. You knew what to do,
yeah.
and now you just got a chance to expand. And
I think like that can be the best thing for us though sometimes is like when we move
mhm,
and then we're forced to figure out how would I do this if since I'm not living there.
Kind of create your systems
Yeah,
and processes.
I'll tell you an example, right? So an example, when we really started spending a lot of time in Dallas, we hadn't really decided we would move, but we were kind of staying here a lot.
yeah,
Mhm.
Um, and I remember one of my maintenance guys in Tupelo called me and he said, "Hey, turn on the news. Your house is on fire." Right? Well, I couldn't. This happened probably 3 times, but
Oh
this
my
is
God.
3 times.
I own a lot of properties, but no,
Not to the same house?
This was no, not to the same house. This was the first time, right? This was the first time, and this was probably maybe this was like property 20.
Yeah.
right? So I hadn't ever filed an insurance claim before. I was nervous. But the first thing I thought was, oh, shoot, I can't turn on the news because I'm not there and I can't drive to the property. By the time I fly there, hopefully the fire will be out. So all of this creates a new system that you have to create. Okay, like how are we going to file the insurance claim even though I'm not there? How are we going to get pictures of the property even though I'm not there? Who am I going to trust with talking to, the insurance agent and an adjuster? And I just remember saying, there's no way I'm going to get there in time. So we got to figure it out. And I think about that in several ways, like me not being the person that's actually talking to the tenants or, flipping the property or managing the project has always helped me create systems around what do I need to teach somebody else in order them to be able to facilitate it.
So after number 1 or 2 or 3, did you make the fire code book?
Oh, I didn't make the fire code book. We still don't have a process around fires because they shouldn't be happening frequently. I've had 1, 2, 3, maybe 3 fires in 7 years, and we've literally got hundreds of rentals. So you're gonna have some insurance claims and stuff like that happen, but just
Were they tenant caused? Or?
always tenant calls.
Yeah, I would only imagine.
I have not had any accidental fires
So
in the properties.
Do you require them to have insurance?
For their
Liability?
stuff, like they have insurance for their stuff. We do.
What about liability though?
I don't. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that on live here, but I don't have that. I mean, we have liability. We have general liability. That's always served us well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when there is a fire for a tenant, like you're devastated for them because as an investor, I'm losing kind of an asset, and I've never not made out well.
Yeah.
Just frankly.
Yeah.
So they're losing everything, but I'm insured and I'm taken care of. And I didn't have anything in that house other than the story of how I got it.
Right.
And that's
Now you
we've
have a new story.
always switched from thinking about like, the money part of it to thinking about how can we help them in this situation. That's what we always have done. And it's only been 3 times, so it shouldn't happen much. It's like only 3.
That's nuts.
3 or 4 times.
So I want to ask about, so there's a thing that people have. I know her and I have gone through this, and I think over the last year or so, we've really kind of changed our position on it, is attachment to some of the properties. Have you gone through that at all? He's like,
I definitely have.
Yeah, you have.
So I get it. Y'all both have it?
Yeah. Well, we're it's only on 2 now, but the other ones were like, get rid of them. Let's go. No,
3.
there's 3, but the other ones are like, once we get the moment,
Because one of them is the first house I ever bought.
the other
so-
ones.
Yeah.
I still own that. And
Mhm.
then the house where we moved into after we got married and started our family.
Mm-hmm.
And then the place we are now where basically the boys have grown up.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 attachments.
So
But the rest of them, they can go.
So the market turned this year, and I think we flipped 30, 40 homes in Dallas prior years, and this year we haven't done any. I think we did 1 this
Yeah.
year. Big change for us because of interest rates and just product and pricing and just not feeling comfortable with the market right now. And so we had to get that income from somewhere, right, that we were used to. And so we've sold some of the portfolio this year just to keep bills paid and keep lights on. And as I'm selling, every property has a story. Like
Yeah.
I use realtors to sell that are not us because every property I'm going to be like, that's the one where, so I definitely get it. I definitely get it. And it's been difficult, but it has helped to sell. Now in that same regard, like all of the houses we've ever lived in, I still own.
All right, so we're not crazy.
I even did like owner financing to people and bought them back from them. Right? Like, once I was able to, like being able to say, hey, do you mind if I just give you like 3 years of your payments back? And they've always accepted that so that I could keep those houses. So,
There you go.
yeah.
I like that. You know what? Just kidding. I want that back. Yeah, that's so we're not crazy with that. 'cause
No, you're not.
the-
And
the-
actually, like my wife, if she was sitting here, like she really likes that we're able to keep those houses. That would be she's not really interested in the business, but like the memories of the house we had kids in or the first house we got married in, those memories she's sentimental about.
Yeah.
I want to be able to drive by and be like, we're not just driving by, Jake. We're walking in.
Yeah.
This is where it started. This is where you guys were born and raised for a couple years, and this is
Yeah.
because that's something that I know, like that we've have like my parents still own the house that I grew up in and my grandparents' house that I spent a lot of time in too. So I can always go back that, and I'm pretty sure my brothers won't want anything to do with it. So we'll get to keep that too at some point. We'll, however that works out, but it's nice to have that to look back and be like, it's still there. I've always
The house where your dad grew up too.
yeah. Oh, my granddad grew up even further back.
Yeah, I can't say that. My dad actually sold our childhood home before I knew anything about real estate investing, and he
Yeah.
owner financed it to someone, right? But I didn't get to buy that house. I didn't know what I know now.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll be my New York Jets moment when I can buy the house.
I'll make a few cold calls, send a few letters for the next year or two.
Yeah.
I'm here to buy it. I'm ready to
Who's
go.
that influencer online that keeps saying he's going to buy the Jets? Who is that? Is
I
that
don't know that one.
Is that Vanderchuck? I think?
Oh, Gary V.
Gary V. Yeah, he's gonna buy the New York Jets. That's his dream. So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go back and buy the house we grew up in. That'll be
I
fun.
can see that. I can see him buying the Jets too. 100% can see that. So I want to talk a little scale a little bit. So kind of run through that. Obviously, you've talked. We've touched on it some, but any advice you give to someone when it comes to scaling a business, because that's where I think a lot of people struggle. I know that's something that I struggled with, having to learn how to let go of things and scale things. I mean, anything you would give to someone that says, man, this is how I did it, or did you have any issues with it, or were you willing to let go or excited to let go, or were you just like,
Yeah.
I want to hold on to some of these items?
So first, let's just say like this is a work in progress. So
Yeah.
I still have a lot of moving pieces that are not figured out, and I think that that's probably always going to be the case as long as you're continuing to grow, right? You're trying to figure out and you're trying to solve problems. I will say this though, like usually when you start asking the question of should I get help or should I outsource, you probably should be, right? When you start asking that. I remember asking somewhere around 30 units, 35 units, hey, when do I need an assistant, right? Because I was doing the property management, I was doing the rehabs when people moved, like having my kids over there, just being around because they couldn't really help, but they could play and paint, right? But that, like, at that point, you start asking when you need an assistant, and you probably needed one already, right? So I think that that's something that has been true for me. One of the things that I'm working on that has been a challenge for me is, as a small business, figuring out, okay, how do I get A players or the best people in positions and the roles that I need them to be in, and also afford those people as a small business, right? Because in real estate, especially in the rental world, we're not dealing on like super high margins. So you have to have a lot of units in order to hire great people, or at least you have to have a good business strategy. And that's been a constant challenge for me is like, okay, I can afford this person who wants to make $10,000 a year, but that $10,000 a year person comes with all kind of headaches, right?
Yeah.
And I'm using $10,000 to be funny, but that's been a challenge for me is just like personnel and figuring out the right people at the right time. And then unfortunately, like as you scale, the people that you need at 30 units are totally different than the people you need at 500, right? It's a totally different property management company that you're managing. Y'all do property management. Y'all understand that. And so we just kind of went through this period this year of some of my original folks like having to change seats because we're not the same business we were when they started, right? And they stuck, I had people stick with me for 4 or 5 years, but we started to see things slipping because we're not that company anymore. We do have to have like policies and procedures and we have to follow things. We can't just do it the way we did it when it was just us, because now we've got like 20 people in the office and, you can't just say, hey, just text the group when you're going to be absent. Like now we actually have to have systems.
Yeah.
Do
you have that one staff member, team member that started out like this and they've transitioned so many different seats, and the next thing you know, they were here. I joke because we're like, they started in martial arts and now they're in a completely different field doing something different. And they've kind of moved. You have that one team member that you've had to move around.
I have several like that I have moved because they're loyal and you can trust them. And that's one of the most important things for me. So, as we've had some people that we couldn't keep in that same seat. We certainly have moved them. I've got a guy right now that was with me at the beginning who now he just drives and makes sure materials are on sites for people.
Yeah.
Like just he used to be a contractor doing the remodeling, and now he just drops off stuff. So
Just
we
slowly
keep him
change
around.
seats.
Yeah.
I always find that interesting when because that's the next phase, right? If they're changing seats, there's another phase going on. You're
Right.
moving to something else. You're like, okay, now we got to move into this, and but that same person has so much value. There's so many things they know. They almost know so much more about your business than other people do
hmm
that they could go back to that seat, jump back in, and go, oh yeah,
Absolutely.
I can do that job.
Absolutely. And it helps with culture. It helps with culture because
Yeah.
I noticed this in my new employees now. They know the me that's, not in the office all the time. I'm always traveling. They know the me that's kind of like working on the business. They don't remember the me that was doing the remodeling or that was actually supervising maintenance. Like they don't remember the me that used to talk to tenants. So it's a different culture and a different vibe versus the original folks who remembered building it from nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to ask about as far as, because this is something people have struggled with, is getting their wife on board. How did you? I mean, was that pretty simple as far as, hey, was she? Because I know you said she's not really like big
Yeah.
on or involved, but when that conversation kind of backing up when you started everything, was she like, man, let's go, or supportive, or did you kind of have to like explain things? I mean, what was that?
I
You
still
know?
have to explain things.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate though. She has always been the type that's like, hey, if you want to do it, go do it. Just don't cause any problems that we can't recover from.
Yeah.
Right. And that's still how she is. She's very supportive, but she doesn't want to be involved.
Mhm.
And she doesn't want anybody knocking on our door asking for money or anything that I've done shady that comes back on the family. Every movie we watch, and she's like, bad business deal. She's like, have you done that? But I've been fortunate to where, I'm able to tell her what's going on. She every now and then she'll get involved and pick like a color for something if it's a special flip, or she'll say she wants to be involved in the design
Yeah.
part. But that's not normally the case, and I've been fortunate with that she's just been in.
You think some point she'll be like, let me try to take that over. Let me do this, or
I think if I asked her to, she would do that now,
Yeah.
right? Because she's got this bug of community service, and she spends a lot of time doing stuff for the community. But I've always said that if she starts to initiate that, I'm gonna dive into it. But I don't want to be the one to ask because
Yeah.
I want her to be able to still do her stuff. I mean, she's got a doctorate, she's got her own life, and she's super mom as well. So I don't want to pitch that, but
the day she's gonna be like, get out the way, honey. I
the
got
day,
this.
the
I
day
got all
she, the
this.
day she does that, 5 years later, I'm sorry, Gary, but I'm buying the Jets.
It's over.
The day she does it.
You better watch out, Gary.
Look, I need to start sending her like these subtle messages, like, "Hey, look at Harmozy and his wife, and
Yeah.
look at Chris. Look at the story."
I had a dream though. We talk about that. I always had a dream, like, I had a vision, like I wanted to work with my wife. And everyone's different. It's just kind of what I grew up watching. One of my mentors, him and his wife worked together, and just I saw that and was like, I want that.
That's
And
pretty
I
cool.
always ask that question to individuals who maybe they don't work with their wife as much, or they're not as involved, because I see that happen sometimes where, they don't have what you have, where they're supportive, right? Like your spouse is supportive, or it's the other way, and they're like, I want to do this, and they're like, you can't do it, So I always I know there's probably people who listen somewhere, some forum, they hear that and they're like, I would love to do that, but my wife or my husband,
Yeah.
How do you get over that kind of stuff? You know what I mean? When someone isn't interested or isn't, because I don't really have to fight Misty on anything, and Misty didn't have to fight me on anything. It's usually the same page almost to a T. She's just more quiet about it, right? It's
Yeah.
So it's to hear someone say, well, this is what it is how it, I always like hearing those kinds of stories, because they're out there. You can, you can work with your wife, or not have to work with them, or work with your spouse, and still be able to, make things happen even if they don't work with you. So it's nice when someone's like, man, they're supportive. It's good.
Yeah. She's easy, but when I do meet people who ask that question, I usually challenge them and say, you've got to prove it. right? You've got to
Yeah.
put in the work. I think very rarely do our spouses see us really passionate about something and not want to see us give it a shot. But if you give it a shot, you need to make something happen.
Yeah.
Don't
Um,
fail.
yeah, not like the 10th time that you've still been struggling through it and you haven't performed. That does create some complications. But
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about the unsupportive spouse because I've got a good one.
Yeah. I got one friend that was like, had his dream just got crushed. We just watched it. I was like, yeah, dude, you chose wrong. That was it, man. He wanted to be a cop, and she was like, "You're gonna be a fireman instead."
That's funny.
So I don't.
So
Yeah,
funny.
I mean, I don't. I've never had to experience it. I would have kicked her out. I'm like, bye, bye, Misty. We're not working out. So, man, I love it. Any advice, anything you'd want to share with anybody? Maybe someone that was newer. I know you work with newer investors too, as well, right? I know
Definitely.
you do teach as well. You
Yes.
want to kind of talk about that a little bit and what you guys do?
Yeah, so real estate has changed my life. It took me from being a teacher to being, pretty much in control of my schedule.
Mhm.
I never imagined, being a millionaire. I thought maybe if I worked for 30 years, I'd have enough money to maybe if I had my mortgage paid off, we would have enough money to go fishing every day. But never thought that I would have time freedom, be able to take my kids out of the country multiple times. That lifestyle freedom, I think, comes from a lot of hard work, but it also comes because of the vehicle that we're in. And I didn't know anything about this vehicle growing up. And I know a lot of people, a lot of my audience in particular, we just didn't get that education. There's a lot of people that don't get financial education,
Mm.
right? Didn't talk about money growing up. And so I like to, invite people to my community where I ask people, hey, get involved, come out here and learn, get a financial education, learn about finding opportunity and doing real estate projects. Learn how to figure out all the things that you figure, your limiting beliefs say you can't do. Learn how to find the money. Learn how to, find the deal. Learn how to have the time to do it. And so I'd love working with entrepreneurs that are new that want to get involved in this space. And so we always are willing to help people. You can find me on social media, everywhere there is social media at Grab the Map. And
Mhm.
that's our community is called Grab the Map, and we love helping new folks that are trying to get started. So
Like,
absolutely would love to help anybody that's interested in learning, how to do real estate deals, how to do their first one, or just how to run a business. Because that's what I'm learning on a daily basis is how do you make it a business and not a hobby once, you actually have pieces that depend on each other working out. It's a new thing. So
yeah, I think that some people too. You're always learning, right?
yes.
Like even though you've gotten to where you're at, you're still learning. You're still learning more and more to get to that next level. Like it never stops.
I think
Mm.
another thing that's important is that like this is as you build, as
Mhm.
you all know, it's a lonely space, right? Most people are not doing this, right? Most
Yeah.
people are not growing portfolios or building assets or, most people are not constantly self-improving. So I think it's always helpful to be in a community where people are self-improving, right? That people are
Mm.
trying to set goals and strive for higher things. So I think that's been the biggest thing for me is creating spaces where people can grow together. It's like
Mhm.
that self-development environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Read or audiobooks? Do
Oh
you do?
man, I'm a reader for
Are you?
sure, but my wife says I'm a skimmer. So, but definitely I'm the reader for sure.
When you get done, you're like, honey, guess what I found out?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
She
We're
just,
we're on our walks, and I'm telling her, "Hey, did you know this? Did you know?"
does she kind of look at you like, all right,
Look, this week
that's what Misty does.
she's just turning Siri off of her phone because she's like, "Okay, what you said about AI, I'm gonna use it. And I'm gonna turn Siri off." That's not AI, baby. It's not AI.
So I got to ask, because this is something that I know I do this. You may or may not, but after you learn, are you like super excited to share? You're like, you just want to I got to throw this out there. Like I feel like it's my job to help her with self development too. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah, so you got to get to know your spouse.
yeah,
My wife is really not business oriented. She's not
yeah,
interested in real estate, and so social media kind of is my outlet. Or I've got other friends that really like that kind of stuff. So usually I'm documenting and posting on social media, or I'm texting one of my buddies and that's going to give me the response I want. Because if I text her and she says, that's
What's for
not
dinner?
true, or something, she says, send that to somebody else, I won't be happy. But if I send it to one of my buddies and they're like, man, this is awesome, like that's the reaction that I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned something about like not being a millionaire, and I think about that. Like I remember being, I don't know, 17, 18, 19. I want to be a millionaire. Bought the book, The Automatic Millionaire, and I look back and I'm like, that'd been a long path to get $1 million, and it would not be worth anything compared to what it would be by the time you get there.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think, like what you mentioned, like things aren't taught to not everybody's taught that stuff, and that's something that I think having that community helps.
Horror stories.
Yeah.
Like my first speech, we'll call it my talk with my kids as the principal of a school. The first day of the school, you got the assembly, you're setting the vision for the year. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember like telling the kids, did you know that if you save $500 a month, every month for 30 years, it'll turn into $1 million,
Yeah.
something like that. That's what I told them,
Yeah.
because that's what I had heard, right? And that's what was commonly acceptable in spaces that I was in. But that is so funny, because that's what I would have been teaching them to do, is
Yeah.
make it over a much slower period of time.
You start running the math on that, and you're like, man, that really wouldn't get me too terribly much
Mm-mm.
in the next
By
30
that
years.
time, mm-mm.
Yeah, by that time it'd been done. I'm like, I remember doing the math, like, okay, if I just keep saving this, I'm like, this is too slow. There's going to be something else to this.
Throw a couple of COVID inflation periods in there. and no way.
Yeah. So you guys haven't been buying too much lately. I know you said you've
No.
kind of just rearranged things, and are you kind of holding out for interest rates, or is that?
No, so we're still looking for deals. I mean,
Yeah.
we still do a lot of marketing, VAs calling, talking to sellers. We will do some creative deals, right?
Mhm.
If not requiring a whole lot of money out of pocket and it fits within our space, we're still doing those. We are still wholesaling deals that come our way. So that's kind of switching from a more passive income to a more active style for right
Yeah.
now. And then I've actually been pivoting into more like probably more of what you're familiar with, which is more of like I call them cash fast businesses, right? So
Mhm.
like businesses that are integrated with what we're currently doing, but make money faster than the $200 a month passive income that seems to go away when you have a maintenance problem.
Yeah.
So we've actually been focused a lot on the remodel, make ready, handyman side of the business. So taking those same guys that are doing maintenance for us and actually having them go out and do work for other people. And that's what's getting a lot of my energy right now, is building the service-based businesses.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned that. So one thing I want to ask is, if I remember right, Family Time.
Yeah,
That's you guys.
that's my venue. Yeah.
So
Did you know about that before I mentioned
you
it?
mentioned it.
Okay.
When you mentioned it, I was like, I know that place.
Yeah.
Because I watched that building go up for sale,
Okay.
and I remember just driving by being like, who's gonna buy that?
I did.
And it was you. And so the moment you said that, because we live like Rendon, so
Okay.
we live in
So
Rendon
you
area.
drive by Debbie all the time.
Man, we drive by that. We're up and down 1187 all the time. You would know the building if you see it. I don't know if you know which one it is, but and so we're we live, like, our kids go to Arlington ISD, and then we're over in Mansfield a lot for different things. And so I drove by it just thinking, like, always watching, because it was a putt-putt, or it was like a golf or something,
Mhm.
right?
She was doing something like that.
It was
Yes.
something. I don't really remember, but I just remember being like, that's an odd building. What's it going to turn into? And then I saw Family Time pop up some time back and was like, I got to know the venue space, as far as like, what's that been like, as far as kind of not necessarily that space, but just as far as business wise, what are your thoughts, and kind of just being involved in that kind of business? You
Yeah.
know?
So to me, right, like the best business that I can be involved in is I'm not involved.
Right.
I'm a real estate guy. So my whole play on that building was I thought it was a good investment, right? The traffic that goes up and down that road, the appeal of having a commercial space where I could get a larger rent payment, right? That all was appealing to me.
Mhm.
So I wanted the building, and I went after the building, but I had to figure out, okay, if I buy it, how am I going to pay for it? There has to be some kind of income coming in to actually pay the bill.
Yeah.
And so my wife actually was involved in that one, right?
Mhm.
She was the idea behind, well, there's no spaces for young families to bring their kids. So that's kind of what the idea started out as. This is a place where families can bring their kids and play during the daytime, right? They can sit down and have family time, right? And then we realized that there wasn't enough room for that, right? There's not enough room for that in that location. So then we started getting people just asking, can we have our birthday party here, or can we have our quinceañera here? And we
Yeah.
were like, oh, so that's what they want to do here.
Hmm.
And so we started marketing for that. Now we've closed that whole part down that was, doing the kids just hang out. And now we just have it set up to where people can rent it and there's an automatic code on the door and somebody comes in and sets up the tables and chairs and cleans up. And
That's
we
cool.
rent it as a venue. And I really like it because I'm not involved.
Yeah.
And I do have, people that kind of facilitate that, but I like it. And the building's getting paid off with money from other people, right? It's money from the public. It's
Hmm.
paying off the property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you automated some things there and said,
Yes.
hey, we'll make a venue code, or they go in, they handle
Yes.
everything, and someone just comes behind them, make
Yes.
sure everything was great, and they didn't throw some holes in the wall and
Yep.
open up some walls, or
Yeah,
you know.
it's really good. I've actually looked for more spaces like that. And the way I did that deal was it was a creative finance deal. So it did sit on the market for a while, which made the seller interested in financing it. So
Mhm.
that's what we worked out as a seller finance on that building. Um, but in doing that, like it allowed me to kind of see, okay, this is how you could structure larger deals because that's a more expensive property, right? This is how I could structure those kinds of deals and still grow the portfolio with larger assets.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
drove by that just the other day and was like, Crutchfield.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. And so what's
Yeah,
cool
this is
is now we own the land adjacent on both sides, right? So
Ah,
now it's like instead of that 1 acre building, it's probably 7 acres that we own on that street. And I don't know what's going to happen, but someday it's going to sell to somebody who wants to do something with the whole piece,
mhm.
and then I'll have a story.
So it goes further. It goes way further back
Yes.
because I know it's the
Yes.
building's right up on the road,
Yes.
and so I've always looked.
Yeah.
It caught my eye when it was selling.
The next
Some
time you're
years
there,
ago.
you stop by, you shoot me a text, and I'll show you what's in
Yeah.
there. But it's just an empty space for people to have parties.
That's cool. I know
Yeah.
when we were trying to lease our commercial, we were getting, we want a venue. We want a venue. We
Yep.
get that a lot, and our space isn't set up for that parking lot and stuff. But so it's interesting. You're the first person I've really met that has kind of gone down that route.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to have automated the whole thing and made it easy.
Yeah, and that I'd sell that business. So if somebody sees this and they want a business, they can have that business. But we had that issue too with the parking, and so that's when it helps to like talk to the neighbor and say, hey, it started off like, can we park on your land? And he's like, no, but you can pay me $3 a car, right? Because he's
Yeah.
a business guy, and we're like, okay, we're paying you $3 a car for 6 months out of the year. Like, can we buy the building from you? I mean, can we buy the land? And so seller financed that land. Everything I have on that street is financed from the seller.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Just got to talk to people.
Yeah. Just ask. I like that, man. Just to see. Misty, do you know the building?
She'll know it when she.
Oh, you know it. As soon as it's blue, right? It's blue now.
I call it gray. Like, is it gray?
Is it gray? Is it blue?
Gray, bluish.
Something in there. But
Yeah.
you'll know it when you see it. It's on your way to the taco truck.
She likes the taco truck.
There's that one that she wants to go to.
Yeah, I haven't been there yet, but it's always busy.
It's across the street
So
from the
it must be
graveyard,
good.
from the cemetery.
Yeah, I think that building it does really well. But I think the whole idea behind it was, how do I pay for the real estate? Right,
Mhm.
I'm gonna have this payment due to the seller every month. I
Oh,
need to have some income.
it's on the left side, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
now
Where
you
go
woke up.
When you're going home, it's on the left side.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw
It
that.
has a big sign on it. It says family time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's I've eyeballed. See, that to me, when years ago I looked at it and thinking jujitsu.
Yes.
Like,
That would.
could you have a jujitsu academy? I mean, like if I've got friends that maybe open a school or whatnot, because there's a few other schools down that way. I bet someone could have a jiu-jitsu school there if they had the space. How big's the building?
I bet it's 4,000 square feet. I bet it would
Yeah.
be great for jujitsu, and I bet we would rent it to you
Oh,
during the week. During the week,
Well, we own
the
our
slots
building.
open during the week.
We
Oh,
own
now
we
you
own
it.
our building, so yeah.
I'm a salesperson, okay? I'm a
But
salesperson.
but anybody if we have a jiu-jitsu audience, then here you guys go look at Family Time. It's in Mansfield.
So we've rented that building for, of course, weddings, birthday parties, quinceañeras. We've rented the building for funerals, for receptions. We've rented the parking lot to the building. We've rented the field next door for weddings, like all kinds of things that if you market, you get people who say, "Can I do this?" We're like, "Yeah, you can do that." So it's a good space. It's not a business that I would want to scale or expand, but certainly in this area, there is a demand for spaces for people that hold events. So when I see a commercial building sitting empty for a while, I always am looking at it for, okay, what's the potential that we could replicate what we're doing there? Because we've already gotten used to the marketing and the systems for.
Have you had any issues with damages and stuff just from that?
Not especially.
I think alcohol and beer and Uncle Joe or Bobby or something out there just
I think
getting in fist fights or something. I don't know. I mean, that's why I wonder, like, have you ever had that kind of?
In the very beginning, like when we first were starting out, but you kind of stump that out when you set expectations. But we had people that were trying to like hold it as a club, like, and have cover at the door. So we have a rule, like whenever you're coming for your event, you have to know the people that are coming, right? It has to be an event for people that are coming.
Invitation only.
Yeah, there is no like you charge a cover at the door and people come in that you have no idea who they are.
They put a sign over Family Time that says club time.
Yeah. And we get a pretty good deposit. So if they do something crazy, I mean, that's on them. So
yeah,
we haven't had that issue at all.
Yeah, because I know
I've had more issue in the Airbnbs with that than with the venue.
Yeah,
the parties in the Airbnbs.
What are your thoughts on Airbnbs? Just kind of, I mean, have you?
It's hospitality, so it's not for me.
No,
it's not for me. But we do have a few, and they cash flow better than a regular rental property for sure.
We haven't gotten involved in any of those. It's always just that same thing. Like you said, hospitality. And I'm just like, man, like I know some of the stuff we've come across lately is people who are actually calling Misty and saying, hey, can you turn this to a long term? They want to keep it. Like they're going to do the property management. They just need to lease. Can you throw on the market and lease it?
Is that because Airbnb is kind of declining, like the renters, or?
Well, some of them are Dallas, and they put in those new regulations, and so that, and then others are just, I guess their profit margin has gone down, and so they're like, it's not worth all the extra effort.
It's a business.
Yeah,
it's a business.
So let me ask you this, because I had this conversation the other day, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. I was telling another buddy of mine, we were talking about Airbnb, and I was like, I'm just not an Airbnb fan, or we don't do them, and this is the reason why. And I always felt like they didn't make sense in certain neighborhoods, and they were a destination. And he was like, no, I think you can still do them in certain neighborhoods, and it doesn't have to be just destinations. What are your thoughts on that? Do you feel like it doesn't matter? It could be neighborhood or destination or...
Yeah, I don't have any thoughts because I don't really like them. I don't really like them, so I don't really have any thoughts. I will just say, like, I'm actually working. So I've got an 8-unit Airbnb on the beach in Port Lavaca, which is about 5 hours south of here, and I'm working with somebody right now. Like, they have a vision for that place that I would have never had, right? And so I think some operators are excellent. They're hospitality folks, though. Right. Yeah. They can see things, they can visualize, how people are going to experience the property. And I think those people can probably do Airbnbs, in a lot of different locations. But if you're not a hospitality person, and when somebody calls and asks you for, an extra key that they lock themselves out, or they hit the code too many times on the door and it locked them out. Like, if you're saying, I got to go do this, that's not your thing, and that's me.
Yeah. So I like that. What's for you and what's for not. One of my last questions I want to ask too is, what do you feel like is your 20%? If you were a 80-20 rule, like the 20% you like spending time on, you mentioned talking to sellers.
Yeah.
If you're like, man, just let me do that all day, what's the stuff you enjoy the most?
Yeah, so I'm definitely the deal guy,
Yeah.
right? I want to close. I want to get somebody to say yes, but I think that goes more towards I want to help people.
Mhm.
So I really see like if I'm closing a deal that I'm providing value to the other person, and I think that's my 20% is like helping people. So I tell my team it's problem solving, right? I like to seek out the problem that other people have and try to figure out a solution for it. That's my 20%.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love it. What's yours?
I love marketing. Making people raise their hand. That's my favorite thing, and doing it through writing and stuff like that. Like I enjoy sales and closing and stuff, but there's something that's fun about just being able to build out the marketing process and from start to finish, grabbing someone's attention and then be able to read it. And I love like writing like that like being able to sell through words, through that, like actual written word. That's probably my favorite thing in the world.
So you're not gonna let like Chat GPT create your ad
Oh
copy?
no, man! I'm so against that to such a large degree. Like you see, because you see it on Facebook, and they're like, "This is your best tool, marketing can." I'm like, they're all gonna sound the same at some point. There's no creativity. So to me, because things, I mean, like you said, the text you
No
mentioned,
originality.
you mentioned the text, and I love experimenting. Like to me, it's like I was reading about I'll just kind of throw this out here. I was reading about a company that Google is a parent of, and it's called X, and X is behind the automated driving cars and a bunch of other projects. And so they automate them. They say, look, you have X amount of money to allocate towards this project, and then you get a chance to they have a 5 to 10 year timeline to build it, and and if it doesn't work, they're going to quit within a certain amount of time. So that experimenting, like, does this work? Does that work? Does this work? I like to find that thing that works and then just push the button and just go. Misty looks at me because she's like, he's crazy, man. I just enjoy that stuff, and that between. It's kind of like what you said, the text. You're like, you're like, I just sent these texts out and one of them worked. Well, it may not have been the best text, but it worked. So then the next text you probably sent out were improved.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then you're like, okay, now you got this response, and you're like, okay, so all right, I sent 100 out and I got 5 responses. Okay. Oh, we did this. Oh, I got 10 responses from that text. Oh, snap. I closed it. Like, that's the stuff I enjoy the most. I want to see that build and then go, okay, I'm done. It's your job.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Misty,
but
what's your 20%?
not talk to people.
That's not it. She's an introvert. Okay.
Yes. I like solving problems too, and just not like people's problems, just like work problems. But yeah, I like to think of different ways to get results and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, hey, give me the puzzle.
Yes.
And let me figure it out. So usually I come up with a puzzle and I'm like, here you go. It's complete opposites, right? Like I whatever she's good at is the stuff I hate, and the stuff that she doesn't like, that's
good.
That's the way it works. But
that's great.
Yeah. Together we make one great person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without Misty, I gotta hire somebody. I don't want to go do that. You can't die on me early. You got to be around for a few more years.
You have a usefulness.
But so I had heard something a while back. I read something some years ago that if you can't sell, it's sell where someone's at, and I believe that. Like, I enjoy sales, and if some people, they don't want to be on the phone, or they just want to text. They want to do this, or some people are in person. We have a client who doesn't do phone or email. He doesn't have text or email. He's older. We can't force him to do that. And so when we met him to for the property management side, we had to actually meet him he was at a dealership dropping off his car and sit down for about an hour and a half and physically sign the paperwork. We could have DocuSign in a couple of minutes. And I remember hearing that, like, you have to be where you got to meet them where they're at. And so if people can't actually write to a certain degree, if their writing skills are subpar or suck, that's where the world's headed. You've got to be able to have those skills. So I enjoy that part of writing and trying to get someone to go, I'm interested. Once they're interested, I like to hand them off. I actually don't prefer the other half that you.
And that's why you're yin and yang.
Yeah, yeah. So, which she does the closing more now, right? Yeah. So I don't do the closing as much. I can, but it's just fun because I know the message works.
I think you're too much for people sometimes.
You think so?
You get so excited and you talk about it, and it's like way over their head.
Yeah.
I'm like looking for popcorn right now, and just let me watch
Yeah, I can see that. I know you've told me that before. Like, you gotta slow down, honey.
You've lost them.
It's too much. I remember we walked into one client. It was when we first started the property management. I think I explained so much shit. They just decided I'm not going to do it.
You talk too much.
I talked
after they said
Talked
yes.
him out of it.
I was so excited about how we okay, and then you can go here, and then you can cash out refinance, and we should have just been like, all right, man, we can manage the property. I realized at that point I'm not needed in this situation. I got you to say yes. Talk to Misty. Oh man. Well, man, I love having you on. Any kind of closing words or comments, advice you want to give to anybody before we bow out? Or
just do it. Just do it. Get started. Take action. Figure it out along the way. It's okay to start ugly. Get some mentorship. Get around people that are successfully doing it. But just do it. Just challenge your comfort zone. And of course, I want to thank Misty, you, Chris, for having me on too. It's been a great experience. Like the kid in the candy store. I'm serious. Like all these cameras and stuff. But I appreciate the invite and look forward to having you stop by, the building.
Yeah.
I have a little office back there if I'm in town. That's where I'm at. So.
Is it really? That's your.
There's a little office back there. Nobody can see you from the road. So.
Home base.
I'm not crazy, Misty. He just said it. Nobody can see me. I have an office, but no, I'm just by myself.
No, seriously, nobody can see.
Yeah, I don't want anybody.
There's a little shed back there, so people are like, "Oh, there's a little shed," but there's an office behind.
Yeah. Hey, there's something about just being secluded, right?
I can work. I can make stuff happen.
Just like don't bother me. Give me an hour and a half, and I'm fine. And leave me alone.
He's trying to use me, and I've been trying to avoid it. Okay? So whatever you say goes, Misty. Okay, whatever you say.
No. We're almost always. Misty's just the quiet one. So we're always in agreement. So
okay, good.
Don't worry. I'm not. I'm not hoping to prove any points on Misty. Like to Misty, but it's just funny because we go through those things where I'm like, I need to have that seclusion.
Yeah, I definitely do.
I like it. Some people, I don't know how she works out of the bedroom as a desk, and I'm like, the kids are coming in, mom. That drives me mad.
Yeah, I need
it's called
space.
multitasking. Yeah.
I guess it's a mom thing.
Moms are used
they
to
say
it.
women can do it. They say you can't.
Yeah, I can't.
I've heard that.
I can't. So. Well, man, I will definitely have to stop by and check that place out for sure. Thank you for coming on. And as far as reaching you, you said it was grabthemap.com?
Yes, grabthemap.com or @grabthemap anywhere on social.
Cool. Sounds good. Yeah. Guys, check him out. He's done some amazing things in a very short amount of time, where a lot of people take a long time to get to where he's at, and he's managed to do time compress a lot of that. So, thank you for coming on, and that's the end of the show, guys, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.